I was a very serious athlete all of my life and knew my body very intimately. I knew me injuries and the physical limits it could reach in different sports and activities. I was practicing with me softball team and noticed that all of my muscles were hurting. I was having trouble running and I had no power when I was hitting the ball. This was very odd, as I had always hit with power. The next day, I made an appointment with my doctor to discuss this. The prior situation was extremely out of character for me. My doctor wanted to do blood work and get back to me. The following Tuesday, I received a phone call from him. This was very unusual since his nurse was always the one to call if there was something to be done or to let me know everything was okay. He quickly told me that my creatine kinase enzymes were at 27,000 when they should only be at a 3-figure number. The doctor told me to leave work right then and to check myself into hospital. That this phone call had indeed happened and that the urgency was clear compelled me to obey. I left work and checked into the hospital at 3:30 p.m. 3 hours later, I suffered the first of the 6 heart attacks I would experience over a 4-day period. When I suffered the first heart attack, I had been talking with my roommate and his wife. Apparently, I just stopped talking. They knew something was wrong then and called for a nurse and the crash cart, a medical trolley set up with the emergency equipment required to assist in heart attack cases. I was out for a couple of minutes before they brought me back. The following morning, I was talking and sitting up as the doctor was telling me what they were going to do as far as tests go. As my family and I listened, I experienced a cold feeling, knew that I was going to pass out and fell back against me pillow. Again, I was gone for a couple of minutes before they could pull me back. During this attack, I was aware that something was wrong and a lot of people were in the room. Now the doctor said that they needed to get me into the intensive care unit. During the periods that I was awake, I felt okay and was conversing with me family. My cell phone rang and I answered it to find it was one of me supervisors calling to see how I was doing. As we were talking, I got that cold feeling again and told me supervisor that I had to go and handed the phone to a nurse as I began to take a laid-out position. This time, the experience was much more involved in that I knew I was clinically dead and floating just above the bed by a few inches. After one hit with the paddles of a heart defibrillator that gives a high-voltage electric shock to the person having a heart attack in order to restore the heart's beating right. I was now in my bedroom in the house where I was last married. I felt that I had done something wrong and asked my then wife, now my ex, why there were so many medical people in our bedroom. Another shock with the paddles and I was in a black void with nothing but my thoughts. I thought I wasn't going to come back from this one and my thoughts told me I was gone from this world. Then I was given a full-strength shock with the paddles and found myself awake but very groggy. I was stable for a couple of minutes, when again I went out and flatlined this time. I was out for a long time and could sense that everyone in the room was worried. Again, another full-strength shock from the paddles brought me back. Once I had stabilized, the medical team began putting syringes full of medicine into me intravenous drip. I felt odd. I don't know how else to explain it, but I was not myself. My family told me that they were very scared and concerned for me well-being. That was the end of that day. The next day was uneventful. I felt much more myself and didn't hurt. I was told that this was because I had been given a painkiller along with me intravenous drip. The next day was the life-changing experience from all of this. I was talking to one of the intensive care unit nurses when she later revealed I went limp. Again, I was out for a long time. I remember hearing voices, but I did not know where they were coming from. I was in that black void again with my thoughts. I began to believe that the soul was the piece of the puzzle that made me. I didn't feel pain or sorrow, but was curious about where I really was. It took them a while to get me back, and I remember feeling like I was being tested by the Lord. As I regained consciousness, I saw a very scared look on my favorite nurse's face, and I also began to get a little scared. After all, this had been a 4-day affair, and they appeared to have no idea what was going on. Now for the life-changing experience. This time I was above, looking at myself while a nurse was giving orders in a very stern voice, and a lot of paper was being ripped open and thrown to the floor. They were putting syringes one after another into me intravenous drip. There were a lot of people around the bed moving very quickly, doing their respective jobs. I continued to watch myself, not responding to them. Suddenly, I was in the most serene place I had ever been in my life. I was happy and I didn't feel any pain. I actually didn't feel a physical body at all. It was beautiful in that the sun was shining, and I felt as though I was floating with the clouds in the most peace I had ever experienced. Without voice, the Lord asked me if I was happy with what I had accomplished in my life, and did I want to stay. I have to be honest and say that I really did want to stay. I didn't feel any of the aches and pains I had from back surgery previously, nor the frustrations I felt in everyday life. I thought about it though, and then told him I had unfinished business back there on Earth. I had a 10-year-old son that I needed to raise and protect from the psychological and emotional battering he would receive from his mentally ill mother. She was a functioning psychotic, alcoholic, and, in general, a messed-up woman. In an instant, I was literally slammed back to me bed, awake and receiving the paddles at full strength. I raised myself up just a little bit higher than they had me. They had one paddle on my chest and the other on my back. I spoke to the nurse that was on the right side, saying, "Please don't do that again." She shouted that I was back, looking both relieved and exhausted. I heard somebody laughing at my response, and the air in the room became much more relaxed. The medical team had called for the chaplain, and he was with me mother and father as well as me ex-wife. Later, my mother told me that she was so sure that I was gone that she went numb and couldn't respond to the news that I had returned. Ever since those 4 days, I have felt that my wiring has been seriously messed up. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, along with depression and anxiety. This was, in part, because the doctors never figured out what was causing these attacks, so they made the decision to put a pacemaker in my chest for insurance. Not knowing why I had those attacks really troubled me, and I have flashbacks to that last day when so much was going on. Sometimes I experience these flashbacks for a couple of hours, and then sometimes they will haunt me for a couple of days. Watching similar experiences on television gives me a jolt of fast, and I have to get up and leave the room.